you. Today, we're going to talk about something very this need of the hour, like SMEs and startups, because we've been working on with the startups for a long time. But how about also SMEs? So how the SMEs can work with startups, because you see the biggest challenge for SMEs is to bring innovation in their business. They're already well established in certain areas, and they continue to grow in that, but they have to also bring innovation, and that is where the startups can play a role. So it's a very a strong relationship, you can say synergistic relationship, and that's the title of the session today. So we're going to go through the journey of how these startups have evolved and how SMEs can collaborate with that and bring value for each other and also to the ecosystem. So the SMEs can actually help the startups to go to next level, and then the corporates can come in and help them to go further. It's like a baton relay passing. So that is how we would like to do it. So let me quickly walk you through a few slides. So this open innovation is a concept that was created by Dr. Henry Chesbrough. So he is the man who is considered the father of open innovation. So he still teaches at the Haas School of Business in UC Berkeley, and he runs something called Center for Open Innovation there in Berkeley. And so his concept is basically, if you imagine any organization, whether it is a large corporation or if you look at even smaller companies, etc., what happens is that there's a lot of IP, lot of knowledge inside the organization, and we call it the internal technology base. And you can imagine a whole company as a kind of a funnel with a lot of holes, as you see there, we call the pores, and the technologies that are outside, as you see the external technology base, it can be in a university, it could be in a startup, it could be in a researcher or a scientist. So all of that can come and mingle with it and then go out as a combination. This is how open innovation works. So it works two ways. One is that, like I explained, the external ideas coming in, mixing with the internal ones and going out. Another is the internal IPs. Large organizations and also SMEs have a lot of IP internally, and those actually can go outside the organization and create value for everybody concerned. So it is outside in as well as inside out. Okay, so that's please remember that, and that's how it works. And there are many examples of successes of open innovation, and just I will name one of them is GE. So they were 2007. They invested about $1 billion in open innovation initiatives, and they got a return of 7 billion. That is almost, as you know, 7 times, right, of their investment. So this is a classic example. Countless examples of such companies investing into open innovation and got returns. I want to also show you here that is a very interesting initiative of how, how a large company and a small guy, like an entrepreneur, Andy Rubin, many people do not know, is the actual founder of Android. So the Android originally was meant for as an operating system for cameras, and that was founded in 2003. And this startup, you can say, was bought out by, as you know, by Google. And what they did in 2008, and then what they did is they integrated it with the existing, Google's product line, and it became part of Google. And so, as you know today, right, almost 80% of all handheld devices are on Android. So this is a great example. And not only that, you can see here one more example of how the Android platform became an area for others to collaborate, how others could come together and collaborate. You can see here a lot of large corporations coming and then, co-creating with a small guy and then bringing success, not only for for Google's initiatives, but also for themselves. So this is a great example of how this kind of open innovation initiatives work. And most of you also been doing this, but maybe not aware. That's also called open innovation. Is see these whether it is an Android store or if you take app store, of iOS. See, what happens is that we are all creating apps there, right? Anybody can create an app, and that app becomes visible to users all over the world. So this is another great example of open innovation, where like an individual or a set of people together create apps, and those apps are put up on the store, and that can be picked up with anybody, and then they can build value on it further on. So this is a great example of open innovation. So what we did was to bring this together. We realized the biggest challenges are in not coming together, right? Because when these kind of great ideas and solutions lie with startups, and they can come together with the large companies' resources, let's say we can call, whether it is their labs, whether it is their marketing, let's say their arm, their investments that they have, and so on. So all of that, you can leverage from a large company, and that is the biggest advantage. So well, we brought this together, where these large companies and the startups can co-create the future. And here we have put big brands. Also, the SMEs are considered, right? So SMEs also play a role, and that is exactly the topic of our discussion today. So this program itself, if you see, it goes by a problem-solving approach. So we didn't take solutions looking for problems, but problems looking for solutions. So here you see to your left is a problem definition that happens. We call the grand challenges. So you can go to openstartups.net. All the problems are defined. There are 20 grand challenges. So just to name some of them: innovative cities, uh, future education, healthcare and well-being, industry of the future, and so on. So what happens is, in every city we have innovative cities. So this is a new term that was coined for smart cities. Smart cities is a whole name, and cities by themselves have to be innovative to sustain, and then also to grow. So that's the term called innovative cities. So on your right, you see these are the corporations, some of them. Of course, today we have a lot of them, more than 900 companies. So they together created this problem statement, and anybody with a solution anywhere in the world can apply. And so on your left, on the bottom, you can see two startups called Levayu and Jata. They were selected by these corporations as some of the most innovative startup that they would like to collaborate. So I don't want to go into the details because of paucity of time. And similarly here, industry of the future is another great grand challenge, and you can see on your right. So industry
So,
of the
Varad,
future is all about the industry 4.0. Yes.
I think you can quote a few examples because these are new things for us, and if you can give us some stories behind it, we'll be able to relate it better.
Okay, great. So then I will definitely I
Yeah,
will
you can
go over
slightly
it.
go a little bit
So
inside and explain how things happen, how the benefit is coming to the both the all the stakeholders, how the big
sure.
corporation benefits from the agility of the small ones.
Oh yes. So see on your so in the innovative cities, I was mentioning to you, two startups were picked up. So one of them is called Levayu. So what happened when the Uber came into many of the global, and in many cities, as you know, the taxi drivers have to pay for that. That was not required, and anybody who has a car knows driving can apply for driving, right? So that's what happened. And similarly, I'm sure that we had a similar challenge when Ola came, that kind of disrupted the lives of people, who were drivers, normal drivers before, who had a, let's say, a membership fee or any such licensing fee they had to pay. So what happened? Uber began to take away a lot of business of these, let's say, established drivers, established taxi services, and so on. So the municipalities, right? If you see in many countries, the taxi fleets are owned by municipalities. So they were also, losing out on revenue, because what was happening was, when the taxi drivers are not able to pay the taxes or the license fees, renewal, this is also affecting the government, right? So then they came up with this idea. So one startup called Levayu came up with a solution. What they did was they created an Uber like app on the cloud, and anybody can use it. They can, just white label it, and you can call it any name you want, and then you can use it. So that's how they created it. And so this became a level playing field. So once the fleets have an app, they became equal to Uber, right? So that's what the government wanted. And as you see, all these large companies together, the whole ecosystem supported it because they didn't want one company to take away all the revenues. And so this is a great example of not only innovation but also how it impacted socially. Social innovation also was created so that the livelihoods of these taxi drivers were again restored, and the municipalities also got back the revenue. So this is a good example of how innovative cities, right? So as I said, they have to also be aware of all the challenges, a lot of new challenges as we see today, like COVID. There are a lot of challenges that have come up and will be coming up in the future, and everybody, all stakeholders have to come together. So it's a good example of how everybody orchestrated, investors, government, large companies, and even startups. Everybody came together and brought this solution. Then on your right, you see another startup called Jata. So this is a real-time tracking of last mile delivery. So what was happening, when these deliveries were being done, the correct timestamp was not happening, and these guys who were delivering, they would before delivering they would also put the stamp that it's delivered, and the message will go to both sides, from to the company database that it is delivered, as well as to the consumer that it's delivered. But it was not yet done because there were taxis, as you know, right? This you have this kind of services being offered, is that they use motorbikes, they use taxis, and so on to deliver. But they were also facing traffic jams. So to otherwise, what will happen if they delay? They would face penalties. So to avoid that, they would say that it is delivered, but it would take a long time to deliver. Okay, so to overcome that, they wanted to have a real-time tracking, and they wanted to maintain, like I said, the stamping. And so that is how this Jata was created. Another initiative where everybody came together and brought a system where we can have more transparency on deliveries and of tracking of the last mile, as we call it, before it is delivered to the consumer. And similarly, I'm coming to another Gantt challenge. Of course, the details of this are there. What is the definition of the industry of the future? It is equivalent of the industry 4.0. And so and all the details are there. And so on your right, you can see all these big companies that created it. And you can also see the two startups that were selected. One is called Nexto. It's a tracking, sensoring, and management of assets, places in real time anywhere. So it was able to, let us say, you're bringing some spare part or some machinery, you want to track when it's being delivered, because again, people tell you it is coming, but it's not yet come. But so they were facing these kind of issues those times. So they created this, they supported this software and this particular startup, so that they could deliver this, and they could benefit from it. So the whole ecosystem benefited from it. Similarly, e-stocks is another one. It is reducing up to 65% of the reverse logistics. That means there are rejects, right? But sometimes when we buy an item, it is not what we expected, so we want to return it. So there were consumers who were returning it in very high numbers. So they needed to figure out what was happening, and so they created these e-stocks. So this was supported to just prevent that, so that we know the actual reasons why it was, let's say, rejected, and then based on that, actions were taken. So that is what you're seeing here as another startup. So likewise, there are many examples. I will tell you one more, which will be very interesting and relevant for all of you here. This is called Future Education, another grand challenge. So there was one startup, which is used to delivering storybooks, 3D storybooks for children. I think all of us know this, right? So this particular startup was in the B2C, business to consumer segment, and they also came to this large event. And what happened is one of the large companies, its name is Novozymes. So Novozymes is a biotech company from Denmark. So they were there and they met with the startup, and then they asked them, can you make a 3D storybook on biotech all over the world about biotech? So they asked the startup whether they can do this, and guess what? The story of this company also changed, and today it is a corporate story 3D storytelling company. They make a lot of 3D storybooks, and they are no more B2C but B2B. And so this is another example of how our program has helped to pivot and bring different values and different kind of approaches to the startup, as well as they created value for these big companies. And so there are many such examples, but as I said, you get a picture, right? And maybe I should do another session of such. I will do one more session maybe later after we have probably moved on and matured. I'm sure Mr. Nagarajan, so that is the idea. We can do this. We can bring some case studies in the future where how these kind of startups made a good impact and they made the change for the ecosystem. And here in this screen, you're seeing some of the corporations that supported us in the beginning, like 127 of them. And these are, we can call these permanent members of the program, and they are the ones, we're very deeply engaged and still continue to be engaged. As you can see, they're from different countries, they are from different verticals, and they also bring their own, whole resources, right, from different parts of the world, whether it's a lab, whether it is their facilities, whether it's the investment, as well as their reach to the market. That's most important for the startup. And here you can see also from a point of view of these large companies, what value they get. So you can see that one is that they get access to the selected and ranked innovative ideas, reputation building among startups, right? So it's not only for the startup to get reputation when they go and work with a big company. It's also the corporate also want to get a reputation of working with the startups, right? And so that's also something to see here. And then on your right, you see another bubble which says it's also something to work with, right? So you're looking at how you can match with the most attractive startups that are in the marketplace, and then you want to also be known to have helped those startups. Like I showed you the examples. So the corporate also gets an image, also a brand image. They were the ones who played the role of helping the so and so startup and also made the impact socially. At the end of the day, right? You may bring great innovations, but if the innovation doesn't have impact socially, I don't think it will have much growth, right? So you will have to look at let's say collectively a collective approach where it's not only the innovation but also socially we create an impact. So there are many reasons why these kind of collaborations happen. We call it the CSE, corporate startup engagements. So when we say corporate, we also include SMEs because, as you know, right, all over the world, nearly in terms of the value created, right, it's almost 80%, large number is SMEs. So you see why they do it. One is to enhance the ecosystem. So it is, as you see, right, when the large companies or SMEs come, they bring their knowledge, they bring the expertise, the mentorship, and so that enhances the ecosystem. Then boost the develop complementary products and services. So you may be delivering some product, so they may bring some service which will be complementary to what you're offering. Then you'll be able to get a lot of strategic insights. Say, for example, public sector, or you take an example of education and so on. So when a SME is doing something, they could be in another sector, for example, and they can collaborate with you, and that could be very strategic. And so together you can grow. And then you'll be able to access new technologies, right? The SMEs can get access to new technologies through the researchers as well as the startups and develop backup technologies and alternative business models. So this is also very important. because in today's world, you have to also figure out whether you want to sell the product outright or you want to, let's say, license it. Maybe you charge a monthly fee and so on. So there are many business models that they can have. So together with the resource of the SME or the big company, the startup can grow together. And innovative existing products or services, that's the another thing. So whatever you have as an existing SME has got a, let's say they're in manufacturing some product, let us say, they have to also change with the time. So they can learn from the startups and they can adopt and innovate quickly, innovate internal processes. So that's another thing. So they can also look at how to make quick and fast, let's say, deliveries with the, let's say, collaboration of the SMEs as well as the large companies. Solve business challenges. That's another one. Foster an innovation-driven image and reputation. So that's also very important. So you want to become innovation-driven. So it shouldn't be like 40 years, 50 years. A lot of SME companies exist, and they just excel in one area, right? And efficient and save on energy costs, for example, save on other costs. So you can learn from these, develop innovation capabilities among employees. That's also very important because for many years they've been delivering on some product, one particular product or one particular service successfully. So there was really no need for innovation. But if you can, collaborate with startups, you will also learn about innovation and bring that culture among your employees. Encourage entrepreneurial culture. That's also very important. So you bring that startup mindset in the, in these companies. Attract and retain entrepreneurial talent. Exploit corporate underused resources. So what happens is that there is every SME or a big company find a way to unlock those and bring value through those startups, right? So good example is IPs. There are a lot of IPs lying in very big companies as well as SMEs. So can we find a way, because it's been invested and it has been put away in the shelf? Can we give them a new lease of life through the startups? Can some startup in some area pick it up and bring it to market? So thereby, they don't have to invest afresh into research, but it is already there. They need to develop a little bit and then bring it to the market and commercialize. And there are, of course, different approaches. As you can see, you can do events, open innovation contests, mentoring programs, scouting, awards, co-working spaces. So these are all very good examples. So when I say open innovation contests, hackathon is also included in this. So likewise, you can see these are the ways the big companies and SMEs engage with startups. And then you have also the other ones like code development. Then you have prototyping, incubation, acceleration, corporate venture capital, and acquisition. So that's the last stage. So you can see this is a way, say the whole chain, the value chain develops and maturity also happens. The maturity curve is starting from, let's say, as you come out as an idea, from idea all the way to acquisition, right? So the entire growth strategy and the trajectory is traced here through the different events. Then, of course, as you see, it's not easy. There are many challenges. There is, as you see, for the SME, because so we call it type 2. So type 2 error is, so what happens is that when, let us say you run a call for applications for a particular solution you are looking for, then a lot of startups apply, right? A lot of researchers apply. So then what happens is there's a massive filtering that happens. So this is what we call the type 2 error, and that's what we mentioned here as massive filtering. So even filtering in a massive way, because you receive, for example, 1,000 applications. Who has the time to go through it? So what they do is they quickly randomly pick something. There'll be somebody recommending and so on. So out of turn, some of these startups are picked up, and we see it all the time. And then they engage with them. Then they realize that they have left out the good ones, right? By this massive filtering process. So big companies, they have to also be very careful there are people within their organizations who are detractors. They say, hey, it won't work. See, this is not made here, for example, in this company. So, what's collaborating and so on. So, every company has this kind of issues. We call the egoistic issues that exist. Then, how to attract and recognize best startups. So, this is also a big problem for the SMEs. They don't know because they themselves are not startups. It's a challenge. How to find the specific profile. That's also another. Let's say they are looking for some specific uh, particular kind of a startup or a particular technology. They won't be able to find it. How to match expectation with the best entrepreneurs. So this is another big problem. So what happens is that if the entrepreneurs is too smart, then also the executives or the big companies are not able to meet their expectations. So this is another huge issue. Expensive to promote and sustain recurring problems. So even to run these kind of programs within the companies is not easy. It's expensive. Typically they spend 2 to 5 million US dollars to run it. I'm talking about worldwide. And then CSC programs often faint out due to lack of internal and external engagement. So this is to say CSE means actually corporate startup engagements, and this means also so as you see on your left, these are the value proposition that you get from a startup perspective, and you get this validation, business model validation, customer creation, customer discovery, and all that. And on your right, you can also see another big one, which is to say the resources that large companies provide that is not available in the VC world, that investment world. We don't get the knowledge, we don't get the expertise. So that is what the SMEs and the corporate provide. So quickly, this is level one when the startups apply what they go through. So this when they apply, how is the reputation of the startup in the innovation community? So there are people in level one who are academics, experts, consultants, on former entrepreneurs as well. So they all do a voting to say how the solution matches with the problem statement. So that's what is level one. And in the level two, these are corporate. We call the market, SMEs, and so on. They are all here, and they also do an evaluation. That's what you see here, and they do an evaluation in terms of ABCD. So that to denote, how these startups are innovative or how closely they're matching their requirements. So that's what happens in level two, and then level three. This is a pitch event, demo day, where the audience are investors. So then the startups who are, let's say, gaining good traction from the previous level, let's say who received more number of A's and B's, will come here and they will be pitching in front of investors. And then from here, we pick three winners. And so you can see the number of events that we've done in India so far. And some of them went on to go to our level four. So quickly, I'm showing you some of the examples of the level three events that happened here. And then all these winners, top three winners, are selected and invited to our level four called the Open Innovation Week, where these corporate and SMEs meet with startups for about 20 minutes to negotiate on how they can work together. And that leads to contracts. So just to quickly tell you, 21,000 contracts have been signed till today on our program. And this is worth about 900 million US dollars. That's between 1,700 startups and about 1,300 SMEs and corporations. And they also went on to receive 600 million in investments. So this is what you're seeing here. This is the the level four. And so some of the example of the startups that have reached the level four from India and participated in our level four events. And level five is a ranking. So that's why the name top 100, the 100 open startups is to indicate top 100 ranking, and open to indicate open innovation and startups. So quick summary of what you just saw. And some quote from one of the entrepreneurs is from IIT Delhi, Icarus Technology. So this startup scaled through our program successfully, and they were able to build a lot of business through our program. So I just took up one, but there are many. And our program itself became a case study of the Harvard Business School. So it is actually 13 years now. So as you can see, this we are running an MBA program based on our process methodology with the let's say the different universities worldwide, including the IIMB. And these are some of the events. And you can also see, I will stop here, Mr. Ragarajan, and I will take questions. And then this is about how we can build something very unique for the iHub to connect as a platform between, let's say, your iHub accelerator and also to say bring startups and these SMEs together. So I will go through it after we've gone through some questions from you.
Yeah, I think we have a few questions here. One of the questions that was asked on Facebook is about the 50,000 crores that was allocated by the government of India for electronic sector. So people want to know how it is or what it is. So electronic sector, what government of India is recently planning. I think for ESDM there is some promotional scheme that has come in May.
Yeah, I think to be fair, Mr. Nagarajan, you also know, I also know, a lot of these kind of consulting organizations like KPMG and Deloitte, they are actually on the job of figuring out how this can be availed. And there are, of course, many consultants, chartered accountants. They're also trying to figure out how this is going to add value, how they can benefit from it, and so on. So that is an exercise. It's still not very clear. But there are some sessions going on in the ecosystem to kind of unravel, the whole scheme, how it is going to play out.
So that means they have made the announcement, but the scheme modalities are yet to be finalized.
Correct. That
Right.
is right. And it's very
So
big,
I
as
think
you know.
what I can guess is that I'm just making a personal guess, is that it will be related to electronics manufacturing, probably semiconductor industry, silicon based industries, manufacturing of circuits and chips, and transistors and these kind of things, electronics basically. I
Correct.
think manufacturing would be a major component of it. That was the question from Mr. J Patel on Facebook. The next question is from Mr. J Sudani from he is with the Parallel University. He has asked, students' biggest challenge is how to find a real startup opportunity. In fact, I think the ideas you are pitching is to find the startup opportunity, because the opportunity starts from a problem, right?
Yes.
So how do you guide the students to look for an opportunity that is based on a market?
So, Mr. Jay Sudani, I would like to say good evening to you. So, this is one challenge, it's faced by all entrepreneurs, all students, in fact. So, what I have as a very simple solution is, see, take in your own, let's say, your own environment where you live. So, there could be the public sector units, there could be utilities like, for example, take what we call here BESCOM, your power distributor. So that could be similar to that. There are many others, in your area. It could be a municipality, it could be a corporation. Go and talk to them and find out what challenges they face. So they will give you a whole lot of problems, right? And that is what then becomes an area for you to start working. And then this could be a real life problem that can solve. See, this may not lead to real, let's say, something like a startup or a business that you want to do later, but it gives you good experience. And then what happens is you begin to learn about how to solve problems. So this is an important step as a student. That is what I would advise, because I went through the same. So it is very difficult to find, for example, let us you say that you have to get problems on your plate. That's not going to happen. We have to go search the problems and find, because it's not going to be like somebody is going to come and say, hey, this is my problem, solve it. You have to go and find them. So that is my point. And so it is my suggestion that uh, put the students as groups, let them go meet in their own locality, around your own university. I'm sure there are a lot of problems even within your university. There could be problems they can solve. So this is what I would advise, and they will learn from it, and that will lead to something more valuable as they gain on experience and they mature. And I
Yeah,
see, so this is, can I take the next question? It says from Vaidehi, what
yeah,
is
please.
CSC? CSC stands for Corporate Startup Engagements. Okay, so that's a short term. It's a globally used word to bring about, like engagements means partnership or collaboration. So that's a broad term for it. And I walked you through some of the examples. So that's what it is.
Yeah, there was another question about what is SME. I think you can explain that also.
Oh, yes. So SME stands for small and medium enterprise. So this is so when you say what is a corporate, what is an SME, what is a startup, what is the differentiation between them? It's a good question. So I can say one thing is that startups are ones, let us say, people come with ideas, and usually, the government has given a definition. Anybody today with less than 25 lakhs revenues. So that is the definition government has given. If you're less than that, then you are a startup. And if you become, let's say, more than 25 lakhs, then you're tending towards an SME. And I can tell you, there are family-owned businesses, in your own area in Gujarat, let us say. There are people running businesses for 50 years, even 100 years. So those are small ones. They are not big companies yet, but they are what you call SMEs, small and medium enterprise. And this, again, government has given some definitions. So they have said up to 250 crores. You can call them as micro SMEs, and then from you when you go on to about 1,000 crores, you call them SME and medium and so on. So they created sub definitions. So this is something which you can find in the website of the Ministry of Company Affairs. There's also MSME Ministry. So if you go there, you will find these details. But I think if you just say the difference between startup and SME is that usually startups are very, very small. There's almost like an idea, and they are in the prototyping level to trying to find a first customer, MVP, and whereas an SME is already well established. So this is where this symbiotic relationship can happen. The title of our session today, because when the idea is still getting developed, I would want to give you an example here, Mr. Nagarajan, and also to Harish Dejani, this assistant professor who asked this question. So I met with this SME who is doing about 600 crore revenue in Kochi, and they are into this voltage stabilizers and UPS business. UPS and voltage stabilizers, there are very well established companies all over India. Different ones are there. So this particular entrepreneur met me, and he said he has been wanting to encourage student entrepreneurs. And so he goes to an engineering college in his area within Kochi, and then he picks up students with good ideas relating to power, because that is his area. So then he wants to mentor them, and he also gives an investment of 25 lakhs. So I want to tell you, he really talked to me about a problem, and that could be also something which people like Professor Jay Sudhani should solve. So what happened? He said in the first year he picked up 3 students and then gave them 25 lakhs to solve a problem. They came up with some very good idea and it is relating to his business. So he not only mentored them, he provided his own resources to develop it. And what happened? About 9 months later, these 3 people left, and they left the job. I mean, they left the startup and then went on to join a big company. And so he said, look, I believed and trusted these people and put everything. They left the job. And look, my work is not completed. My money is gone. It's a loss. But later I have become very wise now. So what he's doing nowadays is he's signing on bond paper with the parents that 3 years they should not leave this company. And so he's giving unlimited money. He says, I'll give you even 2 to 3 crores, no problem. But you have to sign on the bond paper. And so I'm just giving you an example of there are SMEs playing such roles. So this gives you an idea how within Gujarat there are so many SMEs. If you can bring about a good collaboration, a synergistic collaboration between student entrepreneurs, and as a government from education department, if you can come up with a scheme where the students don't have to leave. And I'm telling you one more thing, the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be very hard to find a job, right? So there'll be no other alternative but to go into a startup. But I'm just saying, even the situation becomes good, then we should have a scheme that works. And I think this way, by guaranteeing both sides, the risk is reduced. The student also gets to work on a real life project. And on the other hand, the entrepreneur who's putting the money, the SME guy who's putting the money, he also gets a return. Otherwise, what happens is that this kind of things will happen, and people will find better jobs, they will leave. So I'm just giving you a real challenge faced by such SMEs when they want to encourage student entrepreneurs. So I thought I would share with you this this
Yeah.
specific live case that
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. These are practical challenges, and it happens in the system, and we should be aware of these things. And I'm so happy to state, this program initially we started for focus on Gujarat, and we had people participating from all the corners of Gujarat, even from very interior areas, different districts, and all that. Now we have participants from across India also. We
Hmm.
generally have regular people, few from Jaipur National University. I keep seeing Mr. Saurabh, and I just saw one person from Matunga in Mumbai. And I am also happy to see that one person is from my native place, Trichy.
Ah,
Assistant Professor Mari Selvi has come. So it's so
okay,
glad to have people across India, length and breadth of India, but everything that is uniting all the people
yeah,
is the idea of startups and innovation and the knowledge sharing that is happening through this iHub webinar series.
absolutely
And I think one more person from Dehradun, Ms. Sheetal, is also there. So we are all, this all inspires us to keep working and keep finding new things to, make this time very, very productive. So
correct.
that has been a wonderful journey so far. This is our 64th session,
Fantastic.
and we are on a journey to complete 100 webinars, and it has been so good so far. I think now, taking a break from questions, I think we should finish the slides and then see if there are many more
Yeah,
questions.
sure. So one before I go into my back into my session, I want to also answer the last question from Galaxy A330. So, are you personally giving any investment to student startups? So, I just answered this. I don't know whose name that is. So, I just said that we should work out a scheme between the SMEs and students, and the student entrepreneurs can be let's say they get in mentorship as well as investment from these kind of SMEs. It will be a great synergy, and it will be like a long-term relationship that can exist between both. So that is what I would like to suggest. And the last one there is from Om Prakash Shukla. It says, I'm a professor, technical event from Power University. I have one query. How do one combat fear, doubt to start any startup? As maximum times people came to me and they are afraid whether their idea will work or not in the society. Okay. So this is a common problem, Om Prakash Shukla. As I want to Professor Shukla, I want to tell you that this is a very common problem. So the only way we can address that is by education. We have to do sessions and bring to the understanding that this is a very common problem, and we have to do some workshops and remove that fear so that they begin to actually work on the idea and bring it to a certain level of maturity, and thereafter they should be able to bring it to prototyping level, from idea to prototyping and all that. So there are people in the ecosystem who can mentor, and I'm sure your own EDC can help you in this. So I think the answer is through education and through workshops. That's the only way we can combat that fear. And what
Yeah,
has
this
been
webinar is also for that same purpose.
yeah, yeah, you're right about that. I was about to say that. So there is one question from Ajay Kumar Barot. What has been your success mantra since you have been successful in quite a few? So answer is very simple. What happens is that you have an approach where you can say, I see a problem, I want to solve it, right? So that is an approach you want to take. That's a culture. On the other hand, you see a problem and say, okay, chalta hai, somebody else will solve it. So, as long as you are a go-getter and you want to take on this responsibility of solving that problem, you have that mindset, I think the rest will fall in place. So, there are a lot of challenges. It's not easy to become an entrepreneur, but once you have decided in your mind, then you can find ways to solve it. And I covered that in the effectuation program that I did last time. How you have to follow this 5 principles of effectuation, and so that is also something I'm recommending here to Mr. Nagarajan. You should include that as part of the curriculum effectuation, and I can actually get Dr. Saraswati to endorse this for you, so that it becomes part of it's your curriculum, school curriculum itself. We can teach about what is effectuation, so that these kind of fears of starting up will not happen, and it will be a natural thing. So if you see in Israel, students begin to do entrepreneurship from the class sixth grade onwards. They're taught about entrepreneurship, and so that is why when they grow up and become 20 years old or 22 years old, they are very well equipped. They are not at all afraid of losing. So the first thing we should do is that culturally, that that what we call the failure. If you think that, oh, I'm going to fail, right? So that fear of failure should go away, and that it's a cultural thing, right? So why we are worried? Because you think your friends will tease you, or maybe your classmates are going to tease you, and so on. So, or your parents are going to tell you something. So you're worried about all that, right? So don't worry about all that. So today you have to think, you did something which others didn't do. Okay, fail, okay, doesn't matter. But at least you took the, let's say, the decision to tackle that, and you went to the step of trying to solve the problem. That itself, I should say, hats off to you. I think that is the kind of culture we should bring in, and that should inspire. So I want to also tell you, Ms. Nagarajan, we should bring this into the school curriculum. That this culture where we say it's okay to fail. It's nothing big deal, right? And everybody
Yeah,
learns.
absolutely.
So I think that's
Yes,
very
yes.
important. Okay, now we can
Yeah,
go
in
back.
fact, one of the role of iHub is to create that sandbox environment where you will not be get hurt. You will, even if you fail. It is for you there to experience the venture, the startup.
Yeah. So there's a question from Mr. Bhushan. Don't you think due to these conditions, SME will not provide investment to new startup? No, sorry. I was just telling you, Bhushan, that this same gentleman, even though he faced the problem, he went to solve it. I told you, right, how he signed a bond with these parents and also the concerned students together. He has solved the problem. So now he said he's working with about 15 startups in the power sector area, which is innovation or technology which he didn't have. And it could be some small innovation that is bringing to the power sector, but it is going to enhance his revenues. So that is what he shared with me as his success story. So now I'm going back to let's say iHub's own program, how we want to do it with iHub, some kind of a vision, high-level statement. So this is something which we can all collaborate and make it happen. So as you see, what you see in the middle is a platform where everybody can come together, and in the bottom, are these various called the incubators and the accelerators. We call the startup communities, innovation communities, in different parts of Gujarat. They all can come together, and then their startup can flow into the system, and they can connect. And then I want to show you here the next slide, which is to say, uh, you can also see that on the comments what is happening, and what each startup is doing, what SME is having, etc. Right? So they all get a space here. They will be able to mention about what they're doing, what is the value creation, what's their value proposition, everything they can share here. So it looks like this. It's like a one pager. Uh, every startup and every SME will be able to put up their information, and then it will be matched with a particular, say, like I gave you the example of, let's say, one entrepreneur is solving a problem in power sector, that will be matched with a SME in the power sector. So then collaboration can happen. So the algorithm, AI algorithm that we built into the system will automatically make that matchmaking, and bring out those suggestions on saying, from an SME point of view, he will get, say, 10 entrepreneurs that are possible collaborators for him or her, and he can then make a decision. And as I told you, right, he can work out methodology through either a process where both sign on some document which is risk averse, risk free, and they can collaborate and bring value for each other. So that's so what you're seeing here also is something even bigger that we have done all over the world. The 100 Open Startups is a great example of what we've done. So on your side, the middle you see the slide is that this is startups. This is the Induct platform, harnessing the power of large companies and entrepreneurs to co-create the future. And so on your right side could be student entrepreneurs. On your left, you see it could be SMEs, and we can bring them together. So I've just shown to you here corporate and startups, but this can be replaced as SMEs and uh, student entrepreneurs. And on the bottom, you can see the various sectors, like from fintech all the way to public services. All of them are covered. So, all the people in the ecosystem can play a role, and this is something long term. And this is we can say, like the end game, where, look at this beautiful slide here, where everybody can help each other, startups on one side, students, or as you see, the volunteer organizations, etc., in the middle, and on your right side, you can see the big companies, and how this kind of matchmaking can happen. The mentors, investors can play a role, and then, of course, the entrepreneurial academia, like the EDC of Pablo University. So, all of them can come together. And when we say academia, it also includes incubators, accelerators, all of those. All of them are, part of this, and together we can collaborate and co-create the future. And just to give you an example, we know all over the world that it has been there for many years, that students tend to solve the problem of, let's say, big companies, which are very theoretical, right, in the books. So we wanted to bring a change where the problems of startups can be solved by students. And, these solutions can be evaluated by the professors, the concerned professor, like our Professor Jay Sudani, as well as the founder of the startup who gave the problem statement. So then together they can solve this. And as I said, this can be also made into an SME and the student entrepreneur on the top. So you see, we can do various this kind of permutations and combinations, and make the thing happen. And as I said, at the end of the day, it's all about coming together, collaborating with the ecosystem, and leveraging each other. There's no point in reinventing that is already available. So if you are trying to create something, it's a waste of resource, waste of innovation time, right? Because it's all about timing to the market. So if somebody is already doing something, don't do that. Try to do something different. And that's where, the whole ecosystem of mentors, the investors, everybody play a role, validating your idea and pushing this to next level. So this is how, the whole ecosystem has to work for it to become sustainable. So we call it the wheel of innovation. So the wheel of innovation has to keep spinning. And how can it spin? The investors, like I gave you the example of this SME, he has to make money. If he makes money, then what happens? He's able to put this money back in other startups. He can cycle this money to other startups. And same way, I'm also telling you, even startups into which the angel investors have put money, they have to also get an exit. Only when they get exit, they can put this money into new startups. If they don't get an exit, then it's a dead end, right? So this is how this whole ecosystem has to mesh with each other, and it has to work like an engine. And so, as I gave you the word, it's a wheel of innovation, and that is how the sustainability of the innovation ecosystem can happen. And then our GDP and the economic growth, all that we're talking about, will happen. You can create new jobs, and new innovations can happen within the country, within the state of Gujarat. So with this, actually, I'm completing my presentation. So what you see as the last one is the Open Innovation Week that happens. So this is the 13th year. So this is how it looks, nearly 70,000 square feet. And where, there's meetings between SMEs and startups, corporate and startups, as well as scientists and startups, scientists and corporate, scientists and SMEs, all those kind of combinations will happen. And this lasts for about 20 minutes each. Every meeting lasts for 20 minutes. And 2 to 3 months later, they become contracts. So what you see in the middle there hanging is where it's a kind of a scoreboard that will publish against each and every startup what happened to their meeting. And so you can see there's a clock which is showing 20 minutes, how it's ticking away and all that. Then, once the meeting is over, it's also an announcement, like what happened to the meeting. Did they shake hands, or something didn't work out? So everything is put there, and there are scores given for the outcome of the meetings. So the ranking is published based on the cumulative number of all those scores. So let us say there's a startup who gets number of meetings, and from every meeting they're getting some marks. All of that are added up, and that leads to ranking. So that's how the publication is done, and that is why the name 100 Open Startups. So this is a very unique program, and that is why we are bringing this to iHub. so that everybody can benefit not only from Gujarat but across the country, like Mr. Nagarajan said. So I would like to stop here, Mr. Nagarajan, and take more questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. It has been a very good overview of open innovation models and how it's actually happening in the world. So we are trying to connect the iHub ecosystem and the Gujarat's ecosystem. As an ecosystem orchestrator, we want to take the Gujarat ecosystem to connect to the global ecosystem. So I think your session is a major contributor to connect us to the global thinking, especially on open innovation. The one thing I like about open innovation is that it it operates at all level. It benefits the SME, it benefits the startup, it also benefits the big corporation. Say any big corporation who is into billions and billions of valuation, or established companies like even Tata's and Birla's and Reliance. They also could think at open innovation as a possible way of collaborating and finding out new solutions. I think this is the future. This is how things are going to be in future. But related to open innovation, there is a question by Sheetal Thapa, who is from Dehradun. She asked if what is the risk of losing your IP or idea or credit if you are doing open innovation? You know, so there is a possibility that
it's a very good and valid question. So first thing I want to tell you about open innovation, right? In India, it is still not. It's very much in an infancy stage, right? You know, people, there's still lack of maturity, a lack of transparency. You can call it also lack of trust, you know, between different parties. So this is something which we have to overcome. We have to become more collaborative and more open. So the question from Sheetal is about this, about you know, fear of losing that idea or somebody stealing your idea. So I will tell you, Sheetal, yes, you know, every ecosystem there are bad apples, right? You know, maybe let's say about 0.1% of bad apples will be there. You know, if you look at a basket of apples, but there are almost 99% are good ones. So they are going to help you. So that is our conviction as well, that there are going to be people there who may steal your ideas, but that's the way the market is, right? So you tell me, even otherwise, there are ways for people to steal ideas. You know, the US government is so strict about their ideas, but they've been stolen, right? You know about all this. So I'm just saying, you may have the very strongest security system. Still, you know, there is a breach that happens. People, you know, cut out through that and then steal the ideas. It's still happening. So there is no way to say that, yeah, if you do open innovation, stealing happens. No, it is very, very minimal. Mostly, you know, if you're working through a formal relationship. So let us say that you're giving an idea. That idea is given at a very high level, and then when if it is interesting, then you get into a formal agreement, which is like a non-compete, non-disclosure agreement. And there is no way any company can take that idea away. They cannot steal your idea because these are all there are formal legal documents. There is no way you can break that. And from our own experiences of doing it for 13 years, we haven't seen even one case where such a thing happens. They're all formal relationships, so you don't have to worry about it. As I said, you know, you should, as a startup, right, whenever you're pitching to an investor, be very careful. For the matter, you know, you may be aware that there are some investors in the ecosystem who have got legal cases on them. It's because they heard ideas about their own startup portfolios, which are competing startups, and then gave those, you know, let's say better ideas. They learned from that and then passed it to their portfolio of startups. So then, you know, the startup that pitched, they have taken them to court. So this is happening in India. So I'm saying, as a precaution, whenever you're pitching to anybody, very, let's say at a very free level, at a higher level, you know, you don't need an NDA. Just say you can, for example, I'm a SaaS solution. What what is the big deal in that, right? There are SaaS solutions, but I'm saying if you're going into the depth of it on how you're doing it, what is your differentiation? If you're going into that, let's say the IP level, then you have to have an NCNDA signed. And in fact, outside India, most of these entrepreneurs and startups, before they pitch to investors, they sign an NDA, and only then they pitch. So this is something, you know, you all have to take a
So please
precaution.
explain what is an NDA. We are all learners, you know.
Yeah, NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement. That means let us say I am an investor. Let's say Mr. Nagarajan is pitching, and I'm listening to the startup. And then when you are pitching, I'm listening to your ideas and listening to your IP, so to say. I should not disclose that to anybody else. So, I'm getting into an agreement with you that your pitch or your idea that I'm hearing now, I will not share it with anybody. This will be in this room, and it will be, kept confidential. So that is what non-disclosure agreement is. And there is another one called non-compete. Non-compete means I will not compete with you. That means I will not go and start another startup after hearing your idea. I will not compete against you. So that's called non-compete, non-disclosure agreement. So NCNDA as we call it. So if you really ask me, most companies, would insist themselves when they're going into the depth of it. Big companies I'm talking about, they all have a process. You don't have to worry; they will take care of you. But on the other hand, if you're talking to let's say an investor or another entrepreneur, you have to protect yourself. So always, as a rule, I will say, doesn't matter whether you're pitching to a big company or SME or anybody, up to a high level. I can give you an example of like I'm offering something in power, or I'm making some IoT product. So you can talk at that level, but when you're going into the depth of what the differentiation is, what is it you're doing in terms of that embedded solution or an algorithm or whatever that is, don't do that. Okay, so that is when you have to get into NCNDA. That is my suggestion, and that works very well. That protects you.
Yeah, I think. Thank you very much. I think we have almost reached the end of questions.
Yeah. So I must say, there is also one more coming from the last one I'm seeing here, Rahul
Yeah.
Chatlani.
Yes.
Wish to ask you,
Yeah.
how do you visualize healthcare and physiotherapy from startup point of view? How often do you come across innovation from healthcare? Oh, Dr. Rahul Chatlani, I want to tell you right now, in this COVID situation, all over the world, the amount of innovation coming in every sector, you see, every sector is coming, but the healthcare is the one which produces the highest amount of innovation. And we are seeing from social distancing to how to protect yourself when breathing. So all kinds of innovations are coming out. And today, if you see the amount of innovation across sectors, the highest amount is coming in exactly this particular sector. So I think that answers your question. And traditionally, we have also noticed the innovations come out of healthcare is much more than the other sectors. It's because it deals with life of humans. And also, you see all over the world, especially if you see the most developed market is US, um, the healthcare innovation is the highest there because, it has gone to a level where it is not affordable. If you're going to, for example, a treatment, it has become very unaffordable. So you have to bring new innovation so that the cost of healthcare can come down and it becomes affordable. So take, for example, you want to do an ECG. Okay. Now, if you go to a normal hospital to do an ECG, they have the old machines and there's a cost to it. And, it's much, much higher. Then today's startup, have bought out smaller machines, right? And you can even wear it on your, let's say, on your hand, on your wrist, and you can measure your ECG. Doesn't cost you anything. So I'm just giving you, this is how, as an example, I gave you. Traditionally, we go and take ECGs in the hospital. Probably you pay 1,000 rupees, for example. But now, the same thing is available on your wrist, a handheld device. And so just compare. There's nothing, you don't have to pay anything at all. So all you need to do is take a printout. So from, let's say, 500 or 1,000 rupees which you want to pay for an ECG report, you brought it to nil. So this is an example of innovation. So this is how, from all over the world, we see a lot of innovation going on to bring down the cost of healthcare and make it more and more affordable for common man. And otherwise, this whole healthcare system will collapse because it is going to a level today where it is becoming more and more unaffordable. And take a situation like today, COVID, right? So the government in the US government is giving away, for example, something like $150,000 or something. They're giving for every COVID patient who goes to the hospital, and they're paying the hospital. So there is a government paying for it. But imagine if there is no money from the government to pay this, who is going to pay for this patient? There's nobody, right? So this is a great example of such situations where healthcare is available, but it's not affordable. And so you have to innovate to make it affordable. So I think that's the answer for you.